Hey, I got to go. I see you there. All right. Sorry about that. Had to get my plan squared away. Hi, I'm Brian Bentley, and thank goodness for this thing. Look, I don't know what I'd do without it. Cell phones have really revolutionized the way people communicate. But how do cell phones work? And what's science got to do with it? Cell phone technology has come a long way in a relatively short time, and the advancements seem limitless. Just a few decades ago, it would have taken many rooms full of equipment to produce the capability offered by today's tiny cell phone. One of the most interesting things about cell phones is that although we call them cell phones, they're actually more like radio receivers and transmitters, combined with sophisticated computers that are both powerful and small. But what actually makes the conversation possible? And why are they called cell phones? The answer to both questions begins with the basic unit of coverage, which is called, appropriately enough, the cell. Before cell phones existed, people who needed mobile phones had to install radio phones in their cars. Back in the days of CB radios or radio phones, this is what a typical metropolitan service area looked like. A big central antenna, powerful car-based transmitters, and only about 25 radio channels. Today's cell phone service area looks more like a honeycomb with smaller hexagonal cells, each with its own base station. Each cell phone company gets 832 radio frequencies to use in each metropolitan service area. 42 of these frequencies are called control channels and are used to manage the flow of calls. The other 790 are for customer use. Because cell phones allow you to talk and listen at the same time, each individual call requires 2 frequencies. Now, here's how the companies keep all the transmissions from bumping into one another. The carrier divides the city into small cells that are about 10 square miles each. Each cell uses 1/7 of the available frequencies. The 6 cells that surround it use the remainder. In the hexagonal grid, no 2 adjoining cells ever use the same frequency. But the frequencies that are being used in this cell can also be used without interference in these cells. So, across the service area, many cell phone conversations can be taking place at once. When you punch in a phone number and hit send, a lot of unseen things happen very quickly. Using the control channels, your phone locates the nearest base station. The phone company verifies your status and assigns a frequency for the call. And your phone switches to that frequency. Once that happens, you hear a busy signal, or better yet, a ringing sound. And the next thing you know, you're having a conversation. Of course, one of the most important advantages of cell phones is that you can take them with you almost anywhere. How does your cell phone manage to stay connected when you're traveling? As you travel through a cell, the base station for that cell keeps track of your signal strength. As you move towards the edge of the cell, the base station sees your signal strength diminishing, while the base station of the cell you're approaching sees your signal strength increasing. Working together, the stations transfer your call and change the frequency without you even knowing it. One of the more significant improvements in cell phone technology has been the development of digital technology. In the 1980s and 1990s, cellular phones were strictly analog, meaning it had a signal that represented data in continuously variable physical quantities, and they operated exclusively in the 800 megahertz frequency range. Each channel for listening and speaking was 30 kilohertz wide, a size chosen to reproduce the same audio quality as wired phones. The advent of digital cell phone technology has permitted multiple calls to be carried simultaneously on the same frequency and opened the door to greater data exchange to your phone. Email, text messaging, and internet all flowing through wireless cyberspace and into your cellular phone. Digital cell phones are able to compress your voice by digitizing it or converting it to zeros and ones. So, instead of dividing calls by frequencies, it can also divide them by time segments within the same frequency. Or it can spread the information in tiny pieces across the entire spectrum of bandwidth, taking advantage of optimal carrying capacity. Digital cell transmissions take place not only in the 800 megahertz range, but also in the 1900 megahertz range. In Europe, Australia, and much of Asia and Africa, digital cell phones operate in the 900 and 1800 megahertz ranges, and therefore are not compatible with cell phones in the United States. A few more things to remember about cell phones. Because they use radio waves, their performance can be affected by things like weather or large obstacles that block access to the nearest tower. Using cell phones while driving is not recommended. Non-repairable corrosion of internal parts can occur if the phone gets wet or you use wet hands to push the buttons. Extreme heat and cold also can damage the phone. I don't know if cell phones are making life simpler or more complicated, but one thing's for sure, they're here to stay. Hello? Danny, what you mean you can't go? What? Hold on. See you next time. Look, man, we had the tickets forever, man. You just can't.